Hello and welcome to Africa Today. I am Esther Makwariola. It is Judgment Day extended in Africa's oldest republic as the process to see who takes over from the continent's first ever female president goes from runway to runoff. With incumbent President Ellen Johnson Sirleaf set to sign out, Liberia will have to wait 3 weeks more to choose between football icon George Oponwere and current Vice President Joseph Boakai. And so we ask, what are your thoughts on political developments ahead of the runoff presidential election in Liberia? You can join the conversation and share your thoughts with us on Twitter at TVC News NG. We take a report now, and Africa Today will continue. Welcome on board.
Former soccer star George Weah was all but guaranteed a spot in a presidential runoff in Liberia after the Elections Commission said he was leading a first round of voting with 39% of votes. Vice President Joseph Boakai was in second place with 29.1% of a total of more than 1.5 million votes counted, and with 95.6% of polling stations having reported. Boakai was more than 280,000 votes ahead of the third-place candidate, Charles Bumskin, on 9.8%. The final certified results from Tuesday's poll must be announced by October the 25th. But with less than 5% of precincts yet to be counted, it appeared mathematically impossible that the order would change. Turnout based on votes counted so far was nearly 75%. A total of 20 candidates competed in last week's poll, seeking to succeed Nobel Peace Prize winner Ellen Johnson Sirleaf in what will be Liberia's first democratic transfer of power in more than 70 years. Weah and Boakai had both predicted outright victory in the first round. In Boakai's camp, the chairman there said there was still a chance for the vice president, the Unity Party candidate, to overturn Weah's first-round success. Officials with ex-warlord turned Senator Prince Johnson, who finished third in the 2011 election but had a disappointing showing this year, said he had already been contacted by both Weah and Boakai. Bumskin has denounced the vote, claiming it was plagued by fraud, and called for a new election. International observers gave the poll a clean bill of health, but the vote will be rerun in 2 polling places in Nimba County on Tuesday due to irregularities, although that measure only concerns a few thousand votes.
Welcome back. In the last few days, rival party supporters were insinuating their presidential candidate could pull it off at the first round of the just concluded poll in Liberia. Well, none of the 2 leading contenders in a race that involved 20 hopefuls secured the constitutional 50% requirement of the total vote cast. Now joining me in the studio on Africa Today, I have Daniel Akinlami, political analyst and a social commentator. And on Skype, I have Dr. Uche Igwe, doctorate research fellow, University of Sussex, United Kingdom. Good to have you gentlemen on the program.
Thank you for having me.
Now let me begin with you, Daniel. Liberia will be having a runoff come November the 7th. Everyone anticipated George Weah to win, but well, it didn't turn out to be his favor or to be his lot. But what are your thoughts as the country gears for a runoff again, as we've seen in Ellen Johnson Sirleaf election in 2005?
Well, I think the first thing to take away is the fact that Liberia has stabilized after the end of the civil war. And I think thanks to the kind of leadership Sirleaf has provided. And this particular election is very historic in the sense that this is the first civilian transition. And I think so far the election has been conducted to the best of the standard that is obtainable, though the process and some other things having to do with the counting, transmission of the vote may not be perfect for now. But according to some of the foreign observers, so they give them a pass mark. But where we are right now, I think it's going to be very difficult to predict the result of this runoff.
All right.
There's no doubt George Oppongwe is very popular. Yes, there's no doubt he's very popular. But you cannot rule out the influence of the establishment which the Vice President Boakai represents.
That's the ruling party.
The ruling party. So, and beyond their followers and fans and supporters, look at the statistics. George Oppongwe got 38.4% of the total vote. Vice President Boakai got 28.8% of the vote. Still very close to him. But there are still some other voters that went for the other minor candidates. About 30% of the voters went for them. So how both of them will be able to cut those voters, get alliances, and bridge gaps will determine who may be able to garner this victory on the 7th of November. For example, look at some of the recent runoff elections around. Look at the France runoff election. Macron had a very good leading in the main election. He got about 23% of the vote. And the rival Le Pen got so close. She got about 21% of the vote. But when they went ahead, it was clear that Macron had the edge. He went to win the election with over 66% of the total vote. But in this case, you cannot predict that George Weah's popularity may eventually transit to this victory. Because a lot of workings are going to happen in the days ahead before the election. People are going to rematch their alliances, and some formation are going to happen. So it will depend solely on the ability for him to also play the politics of reaching out to the minor candidates.
All right, now, Uche, I believe you heard Daniel's position on this. Do you share the same sentiment, or you have a contrary view?
Well, I think that he's partly correct. I went to Liberia myself, and before the elections, if you ask me, what I would say categorically is that even though Mr. George Weah is quite popular, like he said, it is very likely that he may not do as well in the runoff. And I'll tell you my reasons. The first is that there is something positive and negative about George Weah's out in this time. And the thing is because his running mate is the wife of Charles Taylor, the former president of Liberia. And I can tell you that, you know, is good and bad. Good because Charles Taylor still commands a lot of popularity in his county and all over Liberia. So the choice of Charles Taylor, in a way, you know, was a boost to Weah's candidature. But of course, you know what the name Charles Taylor means to the international community and to so many Liberians, and his role in the war crime. That you know where he is at the moment. Charles Taylor at the moment is in prison in London, and you know there's a whole lot of concerns, especially among the international community, that George Weah's victory with Charles Taylor's wife as his running mate sounds like the return of the Taylor crowd. So for some Liberians, it is an issue for them. Again, I believe that one of the things that worked against the vice president, Joseph Boakai, is that if you go into Liberia, actually, you will find out that the incumbent president, the outgoing president, Mrs. Sirleaf, Her Excellency Sirleaf, did not necessarily support him. And I'll tell you why. In the days leading to the elections, the grand finale of the campaigns for the Unity Party, it was expected that Mrs. Sirleaf would go to the grand finale of the campaign, and as they do, raise the hand of the choice candidate of her own party. She was in Liberia that day, but she did not attend that rally. The speculation is that she is actually supporting another candidate, Charles Bromskin. So I think that really the person who will make or mar the rerun is who Mrs. Sirleaf decides to support. Because if she decides to support George Weah, what it means is that Charles Bromskin and another guy called Alexander Cummings, the ex-Coca-Cola guy, both of them could come together, and whosoever they decide to support, of course, will be the president of Liberia. And as I see it, it is the outgoing president, wherever she decides to pitch her tent with Mr. Charles Bromskin, who, interestingly, it is said that she is supporting, it is the person that will win. So regardless of the baggage I talked about, the political baggage, which is in a way that helped to boost George Weah's candidature inside Liberia, but is not helpful internationally. Regardless of that, whosoever Mrs. Sirleaf decides to support will win. But if you ask me, on top of my head, I would say it will be the vice president, because we were here before. We have been here before. I'm talking about Liberia. You know, George Weah has finished second in 2 consecutive elections, and he didn't manage to pull the alliances. Well, he could do it now. It's possible. But, you know, I think that there are a lot of concerns about the fact that he has a big support from, you know, the Taylor crowd and the politicians, the warlords and all of that who supported Taylor. And the likelihood is that it doesn't really look good that they return back to take over Liberia.
All right, let's hold your thought for now. We need to go on a very quick break. You're watching Africa Today, and we've been looking at the political developments ahead of the runoff presidential election in Liberia. This year's election can pass for a déjà vu of the 2005 and 2011 edition, where the polls also got to the run stage after a first round of voting. In 2011, most of the opposition candidates ended up in the camp of Erling Johnson Sirleaf in the second round, and a similar scenario is likely to repeat itself this year as political parties begin to form new alliances. Well, I still have in the studio Daniel Akileme. Well, we just heard Dr. Uche Uigwe's own position on this matter. From his analysis, is like no one knows where the table will turn on February the 7th. But he is anticipating that if, Erling Johnson Sirleaf, can put out a support for either of the 2 candidates, perhaps it might be better off so we know where the country is headed. But if you're to look at it, as an analyst point of view, do you think by any chance that George Weah perhaps, might have a flicker of hope in this case?
Well, I think with what Dr. Uche said, he's made some very valid points. I think President Erling Johnson Sirleaf has a major role to play. Wherever she swing her alliance could probably be where the victory will move to. And, she and her ally, Sharks, could possibly be the determining factor, as well with Cummings. Both of them, they are the strongest contenders outside of Vice President Boakai and George Weah. So, in the days to come, in the next few days, how George Weah is able to build up on this same alliance he formed with the Taylor's movement supporters. So if he's able to build on that to cut these strong guys at the other side, he might be able to pull it through for the first time. And also I actually felt the urgency and the political need behind his choice of Taylor's wife. This is politics. He has done it twice. And the reality in Liberia is that he's popular, but his popularity cannot turn to the vote to make him president. So he now needs to consider some of these other strong alliances that they can do it together. We've seen similar thing in Nigeria. Look at President Buhari today. He tried 3 times with APP, with CPC. He couldn't pull through until he got other parties to come together to form APC. So if George Weah could build more on this move, especially the fact that he has been able to garner more votes from the Taylor's constituency this time around. So if he builds more on that and he plays the politics more to get to the heart of the Ellen Sirleaf camp, I think it will cost home straight away to victory.
But also, looking at what Dr. Uche Igwe said, you know, his choice as a running mate of Taylor's ex-wife, you know, might not give him the upper edge in the international community. And, you know, Ellen Johnson Sirleaf represents, you know, in the international community because largely she was believed to be from the West because she had spent all her life there to you know, count things down in Liberia.
You know, the interesting thing, Esther, is the fact that there are only 2 candidates to vote for. Liberia has the choice to pick one out of these 2 guys. So the factor of Taylor's ex-wife is very strong, especially in the international community. Just oppose it against the influence of the sitting president. The sitting president, if they secure enough confidence in George Weah right now, they can create the leeway for him in the international community. It's a matter of compromise and agreement. Alliances are not just formed just for the sake of getting rid of your opponent or for the sake of that, oh, you don't want power to go to one direction. No, there are conditions, there are agreements, there are certain things that will be shared when government is finally formed. So if George Weah eventually happened to be the most vibrant to consolidate President Sirleaf's idea or what she is thinking or the direction she wanted the country to go, he will be up for it, even with the disadvantages of this Taylor's ex-wife. So I think the game proper can be determined by what happens in President Ellen Johnson Sirleaf's camp.
All right, now, Dr. Uche Igwe, let's look at the legacies of Ellen Johnson Sirleaf and what the new leaders should build upon. One would say that Ellen Johnson Sirleaf has done a lot for a country that has, you know, been battered by a civil war. And now the country will have a second president after the end of a, you know, civil war in 2003. Now, what does this mean now for Liberia's democracy, and what do you think the present or the next leader should build upon when coming to take office in November?
Well, on top of my head, I would just say that in terms of continuity and stability, nobody could be said to do it better than the vice president who served with Ellen Johnson for 2 terms, and that is Mr. Joseph Boakai, the candidate of the ruling Unity Party. Having said that, while I was in Liberia a couple of weeks ago, one thing I took away is the fact that beyond stabilizing the country, President Ellen Johnson, we will not forget her contribution towards fighting Ebola. A couple of months ago, Ebola, you know, invaded that country, and the health system was in tatters. And Mrs. Ellen Johnson was able to rally friends and foes alike, you know, to make sure that Ebola crisis was, fought rigorously, and that battle was won, and Liberia was declared free of Ebola. I was there, and for me, that is a very remarkable achievement. Based on the kind of crisis that Ebola almost plunged that country to. But you see, there are also concerns about her patronage, politics. because if you recall, she appointed some of her sons into very juicy locations in her government. And in my view, that is a conflict of interest, regardless of the fact that she is perceived to be someone who is, permit me to use the word, a darling of the international community. But there are also concerns about the kind of patronage politics she plays. Now, it is also very surprising that she is not supporting her own vice president. Based on what I gathered while I was in Liberia, she suggested a running mate to the vice president, who the vice president turned down. And, from then on, she started, withdrawing her support. Because my view is that if she actually came out strongly to galvanize support for the vice president, I suspect the vice president would have won the election. But I think that in all, Ellen Johnson has secured herself and her position in the history of Liberia. She has managed to stabilize the country, and that she has also managed to, her effort in the fight against Ebola is something that is quite historical, and the victory is unprecedented. So for me, she has a secure place in the history of Liberia. But the story will not be complete until she also hands over, peacefully to a new leader. And I think that the fact that she is not supporting the candidate of her own party, leaves more questions than answers.
Okay, let's look at the electoral umpire now. How would you assess the whole process in general ahead of the runoff?
Well, I think that the kind of feedback we got is that the turnout for the elections, more than 70% is really a great turnout. And I think that while I was in Liberia, she made she did some quick inauguration of some of the key people in the electoral umpire and in the electoral commission. And I really suspect that the power of incumbency really is still there. So in all, she has turned out to be, quote unquote, the kingmaker, because it is the person who she supports at this critical time who will win. One option is that she would have to use her networks within, the smaller, the people who scored lower votes, Charles Bromskin and probably Alexander Cummins. If she draws that support, especially that of Charles Bromskin, whosoever she decides to throw her weight with, or her weight to, with Charles Bromskin, the likelihood is that person will win. And it's really a bit like a tiger by the tail, because one possibility is that she will give that support to her own incumbent vice president, the candidate of her own party. That is what everybody will expect. Also, I am very sure that Mr. George Ware, having tried once, having tried twice, will also be reaching out one way or the other for that same support. For me, it is really not clear at the moment where this week will go. But Ellen Johnson, the incumbent president, remains the most important factor in the forthcoming rerun elections. Dr.
Uche Igwe, Doctorate Research Fellow, University of Sussex in the United Kingdom. Well, thank you very much for the much you've contributed on the show.
Thank you, I appreciate it.
Right, let's wrap up the show with you now. What should be the focus of the next leader in Liberia, seeing that the country has a history of 2 civil wars and, a legacy put forward by Ellen Johnson Sirleaf of stability in the country? What should be the focus of the next leader?
Well, I think the next thing to focus on should be how to reduce the poverty level. If you go to Liberia, many of them acknowledge the good work that the President Ellen Johnson Sirleaf has done. But the problem, the complaint is that the poverty rate has not reduced. She succeeded in stabilizing the country, and at some point, she even raised the anti-corruption war. She raised the bar. But the complaint in Liberia is that the economy has not improved the way it was expected to be. So that responsibility, that burden is going to be on the next president to look inward and see what it can do to bring growth to the economy of Liberia. They've been able to gather and perhaps garner some ability to bounce back after the years of the civil war, dissolution, and destruction. But Liberia is still far behind in so many indices, still far behind in the economic area, health-wise, they are still far behind. So it's the job of the new president to now draw the roadmap to take Liberia to where they should be in the Committee of Nations. And I think that work is very equivalent.
All right. At that point, I'd like to thank you very much, Daniel Akinlami, political analyst and social commentator, for your contributions also on Africa Today. Liberia is undoubtedly set to put Africa on the spotlight again come November the 7th in an historic runoff election that will usher in a democratic transition of power for the first time in 7 decades. No matter where the pendulum swings, what is of utmost importance is for a democratic process to usher in a new dispensation where the next level of greatness is possible for the nation. And that is our package for today. But don't forget to join the conversation as usual on Twitter at TVC News NG and follow me for updates around Africa at Esther TVC News. Until the next one, I am Esther Mokwariola, and always remember, change starts with you.